Carl Jung warned us about something few have the courage to acknowledge. Women rarely say exactly what they mean. But is this really a flaw, or is there an ancestral wisdom behind this feminine complexity that modern society prefers to ignore? Jung discovered that the feminine mind operates in deep layers of meaning, where each word carries multiple interpretations and every silence hides volumes of information. While men seek direct clarity, women navigate emotional territories that transcend literal communication. What you're about to discover could completely transform your understanding of relationships, communication, and human nature itself. Jung wasn't being sexist. He was revealing a psychological truth that explains why so many relationships fail due to lack of mutual understanding. Prepare yourself for a journey through the mysteries of the feminine psyche that no one dares to discuss openly. The truth is more fascinating than you imagine. Carl Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and one of his most controversial yet profound observations was about the intricate nature of feminine communication. According to Jung, women don't simply communicate. They encode their messages in layers of meaning that require a completely different kind of listening to understand. This isn't about women being deceptive or manipulative. It's about recognizing that the feminine mind processes and expresses information through what Jung called relational thinking, a complex web of emotional, contextual, and intuitive connections that goes far beyond mere words. When a woman says something, she's not just conveying information. She's testing the emotional temperature of the relationship, gauging your level of attention and care, and often communicating multiple messages simultaneously. Jung observed that this stems from thousands of years of evolutionary adaptation, where women needed to navigate complex social hierarchies and emotional landscapes for survival and the protection of their offspring. The secret code begins with understanding that feminine communication operates on at least 3 levels simultaneously. The surface level contains the literal words being spoken. The emotional level carries the feelings and needs behind those words. The relational level tests the strength and quality of the connection between speaker and listener. For example, when a woman asks, "Do you think I look fat in this dress?" she's rarely seeking a simple yes or no answer about her physical appearance. On the emotional level, she might be expressing insecurity about aging, comparing herself to other women, or feeling disconnected from her sense of attractiveness. On the relational level, she's testing whether you're truly present, whether you notice and appreciate her, and how you handle her vulnerabilities. Jung noticed that men, operating from what he termed linear thinking, often miss these deeper layers entirely. They hear the surface question and provide a surface answer, completely bypassing the real communication happening underneath. This creates a disconnect that can leave both parties frustrated, the woman feeling unheard and misunderstood, the man feeling confused about why his honest answer wasn't appreciated. The feminine communication code also includes what Jung called indirect signaling. Women often communicate their needs and desires through hints, suggestions, and contextual clues rather than direct statements. This isn't weakness or passive aggressiveness. It's a sophisticated form of communication that allows for emotional safety and relationship testing. When a woman mentions that her friend's husband surprised her with flowers just because, she's not just sharing gossip. She's communicating a desire for spontaneous, romantic gestures, while giving you the opportunity to pick up on this hint, without the vulnerability of directly asking for what she wants. If you miss the signal, she learns something about your attentiveness and priorities. Jung also identified what he called emotional mirroring in feminine communication. Women often express emotions not just to convey information, but to create emotional resonance and connection. When a woman shares her frustrations, About work, she might not be seeking solutions or advice. She could be inviting you into her emotional world, testing your capacity for empathy and strengthening the emotional bond between you. The secret code extends to timing and context as well. The same words can mean completely different things, depending on when they're said, how they're said, and what's happening in the broader context of the relationship and her life. A casual fine during a stressful week carries different weight than the same word during a peaceful weekend. Understanding this code requires what Jung called active intuition, the ability to sense beyond the words and tune into the emotional and relational frequencies being transmitted. It means paying attention to tone, body language, timing, and context. It means asking yourself not just, what is she saying, but what is she really communicating? What does she need to feel heard and understood? Jung warned that modern society's emphasis on direct, efficient communication was creating a dangerous disconnect from this ancient feminine wisdom. He believed that learning to decode and appreciate this complex form of communication wasn't just important for relationships. It was essential for psychological wholeness and social harmony. The secret isn't that women are complicated for the sake of being difficult. The secret is that they're operating from a more nuanced, emotionally intelligent form of communication that has been refined over millennia. When you learn to speak this language, you don't just improve your relationships with women, you develop a richer, more complete understanding of human communication itself. This is why Jung insisted that both men and women needed to develop their capacity for this deeper form of listening and understanding. The feminine communication code isn't just about decoding what women say. It's about recognizing the profound wisdom embedded in a form of communication that honors emotion, relationship, and the full complexity of human experience. Why everything's fine never means everything's fine. Carl Jung understood that the phrase, "everything's fine" from a woman is perhaps the most misunderstood communication in human relationships. In his analytical work, Jung discovered that this seemingly simple statement carries layers of psychological complexity that reveal fundamental differences in how men and women process and express emotional distress. When a woman says, "everything's fine," Jung observed that she's actually communicating the exact opposite, that something is definitely not fine, but she's testing whether you care enough to look deeper. This isn't manipulation. It's what Jung called emotional invitation, a subconscious way of gauging the quality and depth of your attention and concern. Jung's research into the feminine psyche revealed that women rarely express distress directly, because of deep-seated psychological patterns rooted in their evolutionary role as relationship maintainers and social harmony keepers. For thousands of years, women who could navigate conflict without direct confrontation were more likely to maintain stable family units and social connections essential for survival. The everything's fine phenomenon operates on what Jung termed the safety testing principle. When a woman is upset but says she's fine, she's creating a safe space to test whether you'll pursue the truth. If you accept her words at face value and walk away, you've failed the test. You've demonstrated that you're either not paying attention to her emotional state or not invested enough to dig deeper. Jung noticed that this creates a psychological paradox that frustrates both genders. Women become resentful when their fine is taken literally, feeling unseen and uncared for. Men become confused and frustrated when their acceptance of the stated message leads to increased tension and conflict. Neither side understands the underlying psychological dynamic at play. The deeper meaning behind everything's fine often relates to what Jung called accumulated emotional debt. Women tend to internalize small disappointments, unmet needs, and relationship friction rather than addressing each issue as it arises. When they say they're fine, they're often sitting on a collection of unresolved feelings that have built up over time. Jung observed that this pattern stems from the feminine tendency toward relationship preservation instinct. Women often suppress their immediate emotional responses to maintain harmony, believing that addressing every small issue would create too much conflict. But this suppression creates internal pressure that eventually needs release when everything is clearly not fine, but she insists it is. Jung identified several possible underlying messages. She might be saying, "I'm hurt, but I want you to care enough to notice without me having to spell it out." Or, "I'm upset, but I'm giving you a chance to show you're paying attention to my emotional state." Sometimes it means, "I don't feel safe expressing my real feelings because I don't trust how you'll respond." Jung also discovered that "everything's fine" often serves as what he called an emotional boundary test. Women use this phrase to see if their partner will respect their stated boundary by accepting the fine and backing off, or demonstrate deeper care by gently persisting and creating space for authentic expression. The key insight Jung provided is that this communication pattern isn't about women being indirect or difficult. It's about emotional safety and relationship dynamics. Many women have learned through experience that directly expressing upset feelings can lead to defensiveness, dismissal, or conflict escalation. Saying "fine" while clearly not being fine allows them to communicate their distress while maintaining some emotional protection. Jung noted that the timing and context of "everything's fine" provides crucial information. When said with a particular tone, accompanied by certain body language, or following specific events, it becomes a complex emotional communication that requires what he called empathetic investigation. The most psychologically healthy response, according to Jung, is neither to take the words at face value nor to aggressively push for information. Instead, he recommended what he termed gentle persistence with emotional space. This means acknowledging that you've heard her say she's fine, while also making it clear that you've noticed signs that suggest otherwise, and that you're available when she's ready to share what's really going on. Jung observed that couples who successfully navigate the "everything's fine" dynamic develop what he called emotional bilingualism, the ability to hear both the surface message and the underlying emotional communication. They learn to respond to both levels, accepting the stated boundary while demonstrating awareness of the deeper emotional reality. This pattern also reveals what Jung considered a fundamental difference in conflict processing between genders. Men often prefer to address issues directly and immediately, then move on. Women often need time to process their emotions internally before they can articulate them clearly. "Everything's fine" can be a way of buying that processing time, while still signaling that something needs attention. Jung warned that dismissing or becoming frustrated with this communication pattern misses an opportunity for deeper intimacy and understanding. When handled with patience and genuine care, the "everything's fine" moment can become a doorway to more authentic and vulnerable communication. The ultimate wisdom Jung offered is that learning to decode "everything's fine" teaches us about the complexity of human emotional expression and the importance of paying attention to what people communicate beyond their words. It's not about playing games or solving puzzles. It's about developing the emotional intelligence to recognize when someone we care about is struggling, even when they can't or won't express it directly. The language of silences and hidden meanings. Jung's most profound insights into feminine communication came from his study of what women don't say rather than what they do. He discovered that silence in feminine communication is never empty. It's loaded with meaning, intention, and emotional information that speaks volumes to those who know how to listen. According to Jung's analytical observations, women communicate through silences in ways that reveal the sophisticated emotional intelligence developed over millennia of social navigation. These silences aren't passive spaces in conversation. They're active communications that require a completely different kind of attention and interpretation. Jung identified several distinct types of meaningful silence in feminine communication. The processing silence occurs when a woman needs time to internally organize her thoughts and emotions before expressing them. This silence isn't avoidance, it's preparation. Women often require this internal processing time because they tend to consider the emotional impact of their words on both themselves and others before speaking. The invitation silence is perhaps the most misunderstood. This occurs when a woman creates space in conversation for her partner to demonstrate awareness, care, or understanding without being prompted. Jung observed that women often test the depth of their relationships through these silences, seeing whether their partner will notice their emotional state and respond appropriately without explicit direction. Jung also documented the protective silence, which emerges when a woman feels emotionally unsafe to express her true thoughts or feelings. This silence serves as a shield, protecting vulnerable emotions from potential dismissal, criticism, or conflict. Understanding this type of silence requires recognizing the emotional climate that created the need for protection in the first place. The expectant silence carries a different energy entirely. Jung noticed that women often use silence to create space for responses they hope to receive. When a woman shares something important and then becomes quiet, she might be waiting for validation, empathy, or a specific type of emotional response that demonstrates understanding and care. Jung's research revealed that women often communicate entire emotional narratives through what he called silence sequencing, patterns of quiet moments that, when understood in context, tell complete stories about their internal experience. A silence after discussing weekend plans might communicate disappointment about lack of initiative. A quiet response to a suggestion might indicate that she was hoping for something different but doesn't want to seem demanding. The hidden meanings Jung discovered in feminine communication extend far beyond silence into what he termed contextual messaging. Women often embed important information in seemingly casual comments, expecting their partners to pick up on the deeper significance. When a woman mentions that she noticed a couple holding hands at the grocery store, she might be communicating a longing for more physical affection in her own relationship. Jung observed that women frequently use what he called parallel storytelling to communicate their needs indirectly. Instead of saying, "I need more help with household responsibilities," a woman might share a story about how overwhelmed her friend feels managing everything alone. The hidden meaning isn't just in the story itself, but in why she chose to share it at that particular moment. The language of hidden meanings also includes what Jung identified as emotional anchoring. Women often attach deeper emotional significance to seemingly minor details or events. When a woman mentions that you forgot to call when you said you would, the hidden meaning might not be about the phone call itself, but about feeling deprioritized or taken for granted in the relationship. Jung discovered that timing plays a crucial role in decoding hidden meanings. The same comment made at different moments can carry completely different emotional weight and significance. A casual mention of financial stress during a relaxed evening might be an invitation for problem-solving discussion. The same mention during an already tense moment might be expressing feeling unsupported or overwhelmed. The sophisticated nature of this communication style, according to Jung, stems from women's historical need to navigate complex social and family dynamics without creating direct confrontation. Women develop the ability to communicate important information through layers of meaning as a survival strategy, maintaining relationships while still expressing needs and concerns. Jung noted that modern society's emphasis on direct communication often dismisses this nuanced form of expression as inefficient or unclear. However, he argued that this dismissal represents a significant loss of emotional intelligence and relational wisdom. The language of silences and hidden meanings contains information about emotional states, relationship dynamics, and human needs that direct communication often misses. Learning to interpret these silences and hidden meanings requires what Jung called emotional attunement, the ability to sense the emotional undertones and contextual significance of communication beyond the literal words. This involves paying attention to energy, timing, body language, and the broader emotional context of the relationship. Jung emphasized that this isn't about becoming a mind reader or learning to solve puzzles. It's about developing sensitivity to the full spectrum of human communication and recognizing that meaningful information is often transmitted through subtle channels that require patience and attention to decode. The wisdom Jung offered is that silence and hidden meanings in feminine communication aren't obstacles to understanding. They're invitations to deeper connection and emotional intimacy. When we learn to listen to what's not being said and interpret the meanings embedded in seemingly casual communications, we develop a richer, more complete understanding of human emotional expression and relationship dynamics. When no means maybe and yes hides doubts, Carl Jung's exploration of feminine psychology revealed one of the most perplexing aspects of communication between the sexes: the fluid nature of feminine responses to proposals, suggestions, and decisions. Jung discovered that when women say no or yes, they're often communicating something far more complex than simple acceptance or rejection. Jung observed that feminine decision-making operates through what he called contextual evaluation, a process where the same question can receive different answers depending on timing, emotional state, relationship dynamics, and dozens of other factors that may not be immediately apparent. This isn't inconsistency or indecisiveness, it's a sophisticated form of decision-making that considers multiple layers of consequence and meaning. When a woman says no to a suggestion or request, Jung found that she might actually be saying, "Not right now," "not in this way," or "not without more information or consideration." The no often serves as a pause button, creating space for further discussion, negotiation, or the development of conditions that would make the answer yes. Jung identified this as part of the feminine tendency toward relational decision-making. Women often can't separate decisions from their impact on relationships, emotions, and long-term consequences. A no to dinner at a particular restaurant might really mean, "I don't want Italian food, but I'd love to go somewhere we can talk quietly," or "I'm not in the mood for a crowded place tonight, but I want to spend time with you." The psychological complexity deepens when Jung examined the feminine yes that hides doubts. He discovered that women often agree to things while harboring significant reservations, hoping that their concerns will be addressed through the process, or that their initial doubts will prove unfounded. This isn't deception, it's what Jung called optimistic consent combined with relationship preservation instinct. When a woman says yes to moving to a new city for her partner's job while feeling deeply uncertain, she might be expressing her commitment to the relationship and her willingness to try, while simultaneously hoping her partner will recognize and address her concerns without her having to explicitly voice every doubt and fear. Jung observed that this pattern creates significant misunderstandings between partners. Men operating from more linear decision-making patterns often interpret no as final rejection and yes as enthusiastic agreement. They miss the nuanced communications embedded in these responses and the ongoing negotiation process that women often expect to follow. The maybe hidden within feminine no responses serves multiple psychological functions. It maintains relationship harmony by avoiding immediate conflict while keeping options open for future consideration. It also tests the level of investment and flexibility of the person making the request. If someone truly values her participation or agreement, they'll explore what would make the answer yes, rather than simply accepting the no and moving on. Jung identified what he called conditional acceptance patterns in feminine responses. A woman might say no to a weekend trip while actually meaning, not this weekend, but I'd love to plan something like this when we have more time to prepare, or not to this destination, but I'm excited about the idea of getting away together. The psychological wisdom behind this communication style, according to Jung, stems from the feminine understanding that most decisions affect multiple people and relationships in complex ways. Women often say no initially to create space for considering all the implications and finding ways to make situations work better for everyone involved. Jung also documented the phenomenon of protective yes, when women agree to things they're uncertain about because they want to avoid disappointing others or creating conflict. This yes carries the hope that their doubts will be addressed naturally through the process, but it often leads to resentment when those unspoken concerns aren't recognized or addressed. The hidden doubts within feminine yes responses often relate to what Jung called unspoken conditions. When a woman agrees to host her partner's family for the holidays, her yes might include the unspoken expectation that he'll take the lead on planning and preparation rather than leaving everything to her. When these hidden conditions aren't met, the original yes can transform into regret or frustration. Jung emphasized that understanding these communication patterns requires recognizing that feminine decision-making often involves what he termed emotional forecasting, the ability to sense how decisions will feel over time, not just in the immediate moment. Women often say no when they sense that saying yes will lead to future stress, resentment, or relationship problems, even if they can't articulate exactly why. The key insight Jung provided is that these response patterns aren't about being difficult or unpredictable. They represent a sophisticated approach to decision-making that considers relationship dynamics, emotional consequences, and long-term impacts that purely logical decision-making might miss. Jung suggested that the healthiest approach to navigating these communication patterns involves what he called exploratory conversation. Instead of accepting no as final or yes as complete agreement, partners can explore the feelings, concerns, and conditions underlying these responses. Questions like, what would make this work better for you? Or, what concerns do you have about this? Can reveal the nuanced thinking behind seemingly simple answers. The ultimate wisdom Jung offered is that feminine no and yes responses are invitations to deeper understanding and collaboration rather than simple endpoints in decision-making. Learning to recognize and work with the complexity behind these responses leads to better decisions and stronger relationships built on genuine understanding and consideration of both partners' needs and concerns. The invisible tests. Every woman applies. Carl Jung's decades of analytical work revealed one of the most controversial yet psychologically accurate observations about feminine behavior. Women constantly administer subtle tests to gauge the quality, depth, and authenticity of their relationships. These aren't conscious manipulations or games. They're unconscious psychological mechanisms designed to assess emotional safety, commitment, and compatibility. Jung discovered that these invisible tests serve as what he called relationship calibration systems. Just as a pilot continuously monitors instruments to ensure safe flight, women unconsciously monitor relationship dynamics through these tests to ensure emotional and psychological safety. The tests aren't designed to create failure. They're designed to confirm trustworthiness and genuine care. The most common invisible test Jung identified is the attention and priority test. This manifests when a woman mentions something important in passing, to see if her partner notices and follows up later. If she casually mentions feeling stressed about a work presentation next week, she's testing whether you care enough to remember and ask about it when the time comes. Passing this test requires no grand gesture. Simply remembering and showing interest demonstrates that she matters enough for you to hold space for her concerns in your mind. Jung observed the emotional availability test, which occurs when women share vulnerable feelings or experiences to gauge their partner's capacity for empathy and emotional support. When a woman tells you about a difficult conversation with her mother, she's not necessarily seeking advice or solutions. She's testing whether you can hold space for her emotions without trying to fix, judge, or minimize her experience. The consistency test operates over longer periods and examines whether a person's behavior remains stable across different circumstances. And moods. Jung noted that women pay careful attention to how men treat service workers, respond to stress, or behave when they think no one important is watching. These observations help women assess character and predict future behavior in the relationship. Jung identified the initiative and effort test, which evaluates whether a partner will take active steps to nurture the relationship without being explicitly asked. This might involve planning dates, remembering important occasions, or simply noticing when she needs support. Women often test this by stepping back slightly to see if their partner will step forward, or by mentioning desires indirectly to see if they'll be picked up and acted upon. The boundary respect test examines how well a partner honors both explicit and implicit boundaries. When a woman says she needs space or time to think, she's often testing whether her partner will respect that boundary or become pushy and demanding. Similarly, she might test how well someone respects her time, opinions, or autonomy in various situations. Jung discovered the security and protection test, which isn't about physical protection in the traditional sense, but about emotional and psychological security. Women test whether their partners will stand up for them in social situations, defend their reputation when they're not present, or provide emotional stability during difficult times. This test often involves observing how a man handles conflict or stress that might affect her well-being. The growth and support test evaluates whether a partner encourages her personal development and celebrates her successes rather than feeling threatened by them. Jung observed that women often test this by sharing their ambitions or achievements to see if they're met with genuine enthusiasm or subtle competition and undermining. Jung noted that these tests intensify during what he called relationship transition periods, times when the relationship is deepening, facing challenges, or making important decisions. Women unconsciously increase their testing during these periods to ensure their partner can handle increased responsibility and commitment. The authenticity test is perhaps the most subtle but important. Women often create situations to see if their partners will be genuine rather than simply telling them what they think they want to hear. This might involve expressing unpopular opinions or sharing less attractive aspects of themselves to see if they'll be accepted authentically, rather than judged or rejected. Jung emphasized that these tests aren't conscious strategies or manipulative behaviors. They're unconscious psychological mechanisms that evolved to help women assess the safety and viability of potential long-term partnerships. Understanding. This can help men recognize these tests not as obstacles or games, but as opportunities to demonstrate genuine care and character. The communication test examines whether a partner listens actively and responds thoughtfully rather than just waiting for their turn to speak. Women often test this by sharing complex emotions or situations to see if their partner can engage with nuance and empathy rather than offering quick fixes or dismissive responses. Jung observed that failing these invisible tests doesn't necessarily end relationships, but it does affect the level of trust, intimacy, and emotional investment a woman feels safe offering. Passing these tests, on the other hand, deepens connection and creates the foundation for more authentic and intimate relationships. The key insight Jung provided is that these tests aren't about performance or meeting impossible standards. They're about demonstrating consistent care, attention, and character over time. The right answers aren't complex or mysterious. They're usually expressions of genuine interest, empathy, reliability, and respect. Jung suggested that instead of feeling frustrated by these invisible tests, men should recognize them as valuable feedback systems that help create stronger, more satisfying relationships for both partners. When viewed this way, these tests become opportunities for deeper connection rather than obstacles to overcome. The ultimate wisdom Jung offered is that these invisible tests reveal something profound about human nature. We all need to feel seen, valued, and secure in our relationships. Women's testing behaviors are sophisticated ways of gathering the information necessary to feel safe, opening their hearts fully. Understanding and responding to these tests with patience and genuine care creates the foundation for the kind of deep, lasting relationships that satisfy both partners' deepest needs for connection and understanding. Carl Jung's revelations about feminine communication weren't meant to create division between the sexes, but to illuminate a profound truth: we've lost the art of truly listening to each other. In our rush toward efficiency and directness, we've dismissed millennia of emotional wisdom encoded in the subtle language of the feminine psyche. The real question isn't whether women mean what they say, it's whether we've developed the emotional intelligence to hear what they're actually communicating. Jung understood that mastering this deeper form of communication doesn't just improve our relationships with women, it awakens us to the full spectrum of human connection and transforms us into more complete, emotionally evolved beings. The choice is yours. Will you remain trapped in surface-level interactions, or will you develop the courage to dive into the profound depths of authentic human communication?